Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Mark Givler, got Kevin Noon here. This is a commitment episode. Ohio State has landed a 2024 commitment from Toledo Central Catholic offensive lineman Marc Nave. We're going to kind of dive into his film here in a minute, but this is their third commitment. I'm sorry. This is their fourth commitment of the 2024 class. Tried to do a little quick math, which is never good. So fourth total commitment in 2024, second offensive lineman. He joins Indiana's Ian Moore. Kevin, we kind of saw this coming. There's a lot of talk coming out of yesterday's visit with for spring practices. Buckeyes open their spring camp, and not a surprise here, but an important pickup. Kevin, your thoughts on what this could mean for Ohio State?
Yeah, absolutely. We've looked at offensive line recruiting through the last several cycles, and sometimes it leaves a little bit to be desired. And being able to go up to Toledo, keep a really good one in state is important. 6'5", 315, according to one of the rating services. And it's funny because we were talking about this is a year where there are a lot of offensive linemen in the state of Ohio that are of the Power 5 caliber, and it's going to be challenging to figure out which are the pieces that you need for your personal puzzle. Well, Ohio State certainly has a lot of needs on the offensive line. We have had a couple of cycles that are either to be determined or maybe don't have a passing grade overall. It's going to be really important. One right as my video dropped off there for half a second. This is a big one. I think that this one is going to probably be a little undersold by some people, but I think this is a very important piece.
Yeah, I really like Nave. I got to see him in the state championship in December. I thought as Ohio, and we talked about this so much on the site. We've talked about it in a couple of podcasts as well, that, Justin Fry's big challenge this year is not just going out and getting a couple of national players, but it's deciding, you're gonna have to probably take, it's turned out that we kind of hit the number on the head. We figured they were gonna have to take 3 from Ohio this year. And I think that's going to end up being the number for in-state guys, but picking the right 3 out of roughly 10 to 12 guys was going to be Fry's biggest challenge. And so we're not going to know the answer to that question for 3 or 4 years, unfortunately, but that's kind of the challenge he faces, is not just finding 6 guys to get or 3 guys in state, but which 3 of, there's years where it's been, these are the top 2 or 3. And then you just take those guys and it's easy. And no one really blames you if you miss because everyone recruited the same 2 or 3 guys. But this is a class that has, again, 10, 12 guys. And so there's that possibility out there. And quite frankly, it's a likelihood that at least one of the 2 that they don't offer are going to go somewhere else and probably turn into like NFL players. And, people are going to have that hindsight discussion. And so it's important that the 3 that they get are capable. So I'm a big fan of Nave's game. We'll get into that here in a second. Just kind of what he brings to the table. But, I personally had him pretty high up in the tiers of the Ohio linemen. I had him on tier 1. I think some people probably would have him on tier 2. That's fine. I think he's one of the top 4 or 5 guys in the state on the offensive line. Depending on how you view certain guys' future positions, you could make a case he's the top guard in Ohio, which I might make that case. But he's definitely an excellent prospect. And again, this will be 2 of I think 6 offensive linemen in this class. Goes nicely with Ian Moore. They're telling Ian Moore he's a tackle. They're telling Marc Nave he's a guard. So they've got an outside guy. They've got an inside guy so far. So some balance so far to this class as they kind of move forward here and work on some other targets. Kevin, do you want to fire up the
let's get
highlights here so people can at least see what I'm talking about if you're watching on YouTube. Plays a lot of right guard, pretty much primarily right guard for Toledo Central Catholic. They love to pull him. You will see plenty of clips here of him just coming around the edge and just taking something, whether it's an outside linebacker, just taking them completely out of the play, coming around, pulling around the backside. So you'll see a lot of that. That's kind of one of the first things that jumps out to me. is how explosive he is. There he is, taking out 2 guys in 1 block. But he's a guy who fires off the ball really hard. He's got really good feet athleticism, plays basketball. And again, he's able to pull and kind of connect on these blocks that are kind of, in space a little bit. It's not such confined quarters. So he's able, has that coordination and that awareness and, intensity. I always say when I talk about Marc Nave is he finishes his blocks. He's to me a really good guard prospect. Now, the interesting thing for me as we kind of move forward here is, everyone loves tackles. I love tackles. You guys love tackles. It's the premier position along the offensive line. Everyone wants the left tackles. So, interior guys for some reason get underappreciated, even though you have just as many guards as you have tackles. But with Nave, he's 6'5". He's down probably to 310, 315 now. He's actually reshaping his body quite a bit the last maybe 6 months, maybe even 12 months. So he's slimming down. Now we have to get this verified. I'm sure he's not lying to us, and I'm sure it's not anything that would be off by any reasonable number. But he is a self-reported 6'9" wingspan. So if he's anywhere in the neighborhood of 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" wingspan, that's really long. And when you start to talk that through, like, okay, he's 6'5", okay, he's got a, whatever it is, whatever that equates to in inches, a 6'9" wingspan. He's slimming down. He plays basketball. You're starting to kind of piece together a tackle prospect. So like kind of in a vacuum on paper, he may even come off to you as a tackle prospect, but as you watch the video here, his style of play is that of a guard. He is a mean, physical, flying off the ball, looking for someone to drive into the ground type of player. So I really think his play style is that of a guard. And I think I know Ohio State is projecting him to play guard right now. So, but it is interesting kind of looking at the measurables and wondering, well, what if they tried him at tackle? But for me, it's just, I wouldn't overthink it.
Well, and the thing is we look at Ohio State right now is it's having to move guys around. I mean, obviously when you bring in somebody like Zim Mahalski, he's a tackle, that's what's going on there. What is Tegra Shabola? I mean, he's getting a look over there at right tackle right now. Could he have been somebody who was interior at one point? I mean, it's a lot to really figure out. And I think that as you talk about this potentially being a 6-man offensive line class, and let's just say that they get the Armstrong twins, and for being the Armstrong twins, one plays guard and one plays tackle. I mean, that's just kind of how it works out, as St. Ed's just is always deep on the offensive line. You get a couple of these guys that you can have that versatility and kind of make some decisions on, and then you go with what's best. I mean, who would have thought that Paris Johnson Jr. would play a year at guard? But that was because they needed to get him on the field. Nave to me is a natural guard as well, but I don't know. I mean, it's so early. I mean, he hasn't played a senior season, but if he reshapes his body a little bit, I mean, with an 81-inch wingspan, I did the math really quick. I had to use 2 calculators and an abacus to get the number there. But I think that it's somebody that you have some options with if somebody doesn't pan out or you need to have that type of situation. You look at Josh Fryer, who's going to be getting his first look at left tackle, but he certainly could come in and could have been a guard or whatever. I mean, it's not to go back to an old thing of we've got centers and we've got non-centers, but maybe that's the case with some players.
Jim Bowman, the wisdom, centers and non-centers. Okay, it's going to be interesting. I think they're kind of pigeonholing Nave in a guard at this point. Ian Moore is a guy who they're going to play at tackle, or at least they're going to start off at tackle. He's a guy I think could play just about anywhere. And yeah, I think a lot of this, gosh, we got to see how this current roster settles with some of these guys. You mentioned Tegra. Tegra was always a guy for me who, if he could keep the weight off, could play tackle. He's got a tackle frame. He's a huge, huge kid. Tackle frame, length, all that. but just, keeping that weight off. And I think he's done a good job of that at Ohio State so far. And that's kind of allowed him to get a look here at right tackle here this spring. So, let's see how some of this settles with some of these other guys. But right now, Nave guard, more tackle. They've got some big fish out there. Jordan Seaton's a guy that obviously is getting talked about a ton out of Washington, D.C., St. John's, big power. Interestingly enough, he's a guy who I think the recruiting sites all have listed as an interior lineman, and Ohio State's telling him he's a tackle. So, the kind of just beauty is in the eye of the beholder type of thing here with some of these high school linemen, where the rankings, services, and the college coaches don't always necessarily see eye to eye on not only their ability but even future position. So, just one of those things that gets played out here over the next couple of years, and we'll see who's right and who wasn't. But, seeing Ian Moore also in person, we got to see him at camp last summer. We can talk about Ian for a second. I thought Ian was tremendous at camp. I think he's really talented. I think he's one of those guys who isn't, even for an offensive lineman, because offensive linemen take a while. I think he's one of those guys who can get out there pretty early. And I never project a true freshman offensive lineman to play, not even like Paris Johnson. I think you automatically assume they're not going to play much. I know exceptions happen. I know Blake Miller played at Clemson this year, but I can tell you this right now: if Clemson had a decent veteran left tackle on their roster, Blake Miller would not have played.
Yeah,
this
you're
year.
playing out. Are you playing because you're there, or are you playing because
Right.
it's necessity? And that's a big thing.
Yeah. So, I never put that on them, but Ian Moore looks to me like a guy who is not a project, is not a 3 or 4 year, hope by year 3 we can, I think Ian Moore's a guy who gets out there, pretty early. And with Nave, I am interested because he plays good competition, won a state championship in D2 this year, looked really good against some really good teams. Does have kind of that multi-sport athlete that they love. Does have what I would consider a pretty college-ready body. I mean, he's slimming down a little bit right now, but he's going to be right in that sweet spot of, like 6'5", 310 pounds. So he's not going to be one of those guys you got to put 40, 50 pounds on. And he's very physical, very tough kid. So I think he's a guy. I don't view him, even though his ranking I think may tell people, oh, he's a project. I don't view him as that. I don't view him, even though I may have had like a Zen Michalski rated higher as a prospect coming out of high school, we all knew it was going to take Zen a few years. And so I don't really see that with Nave. I think Nave is going to be one of those guys who could get out there, year 2 as well. I don't think that's a guy where you're taking him and essentially stashing him for a couple of years. At least that's not your mindset with him. I think, if it happens that way, maybe you've got some good players in front of him, but I don't think that's your mindset when you're taking him.
Yeah, you hope that he's somebody that by year 2 that he's very much in the mix. And if he's one of your best 5, then you roll with it. And if he's, your 6th lineman or your 7th lineman, then that's a good problem to have, because it means that you have 5 that are better. And you just kind of go from that. But Ohio State has had a few of these project guys that, okay, they got a big body, or they've got this, or they've got that, but they don't have it all put together. And unfortunately, not all of those, even under the best of circumstances, not all of those come together. But I think Ohio State's hit rate has been a little bit lower, and that's an evaluation thing. And that's offensive line recruiting to begin with. It is by far the most difficult position to project. It is. And, you could go through the litany of reasons, but, we only have a limited amount of time on this show. So I'll just say it's hard. So, Marc Nave, I think, is probably a little closer to the shorter spectrum on how long it might take to get him ready. But let's be real. He's anybody that we're talking about at this point that's having to reshape their body. You can have a high school body, but then when you get to college, you need to have the college body. So that Mickey Marotti and the nutritionist and all of them are going to really work and help him, kind of shape some things around. And we're not necessarily saying that he's got to be some rocked up lineman. That's not what they are. But, there's good weight and there's bad weight. And a lot of times there's bad weight in high school because of just a lot of things. You're not in a college program, but I think that Nave is somebody that is better than his 3-star ranking right now. I'm not saying that he necessarily is a 4, But I think that the upside on him, the immediate upside, there's a long range upside and immediate upside. I think he's got a lot of immediate upside.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think, and again, this kind of depends on what do you view, like Ben Roebuck, what's his future position? How much do you like William Satterwhite? Where is Luke Hamilton a guard or tackle? Because you'll get arguments for guard tackle on Hamilton and Roebuck, and but I would put Nave up there with any guard in this class in Ohio. I think they made the right call on that. Time will tell. None of us will be right or wrong for a couple of years anyway, but I really like his upside. And I like, talk about the body transition, things like that. I think he's doing this now, which is really good, because a lot of these guys, it doesn't really start until they get to college. He's already started the process. He knows where he needs to be. And I'm sure Ohio State's going to give him a target weight. And now that he's in the class, there's still only so much you can do, but you can start to kind of get him ingrained in your culture, in your training methods, talking about target weights, talking about things he can be doing on the side. There's a lot of things that he can start doing now. And, I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure he'll come down for a camp in June to work with Justin Fry. It'll be interesting to see how many times he does that. But I would think at least once or twice he'll get down and get some work in. And so you can kind of start that foundation now, and you can come down and visit like you did yesterday and meet with Mickey Marotti. And again, all these things, there are things they can show you and help you with now before you even get to campus. And he had already taken that mindset months ago that he was going to start doing this. So to me, as I kind of wrote in our story on the front page on BuckeyeHuddle.com, kind of my write-up of all this is the fact that I like the physical stuff he brings. I like his length. I like his size. I like his intensity and how physical he is. And the fact that he's pretty self-aware and mature and hardworking, that's a really good combination. And at a position where offensive, as we talked about, offensive line is a total crapshoot, I will take that combination.
And I think it's really important too that he's an in-state guy. And you see Ohio State get out there and it gets its core class, and then it goes out big game hunting, and you're going against everybody in the nation for a lot of these guys. You sit there and you get a 3-man offensive line class from within the state of Ohio, and then you get Ian Moore out of neighboring Indiana, and you have 4 linemen right there that, yes, it's not like you're not going to have to play defense. People are still going to try and recruit them, et cetera, but it is not as labor intensive, in my opinion, to hold on to, especially an in-state guy, as it is for somebody out of California or Colorado or Virginia or wherever. So I think that's really important too. You're still going to have your hands on all of those recruitments every single day until these kids sign, but there's a finite amount of hours that you're going to be able to put into all of this, and it will allow you to maybe put some of those hours into other recruitments, as opposed to having to take a national approach or look at like a Nebraska. Nebraska is going to probably put out a couple of big offensive linemen, but it's not a really fertile recruiting area. So they have to sit there and work that much harder. It's when you're Ohio State within the state of Ohio, having all these linemen to choose from is definitely a luxury.
Yeah, I think, again, they're well positioned here in state to land the 3 guys they've offered. They've got one now. I think they're going to get the Armstrong twins. Will it be this spring? Might be June. But you get those 3, you're halfway there. You got Ian Moore, so you're 2/3 of the way there. And now it's okay. Who are the best 3 or 4 linemen in the country that we think we can get? And let's just recruit those guys and for 2 spots. That's a great position to be in. So it's an important year. I mean, look, they had a couple misses in a couple cycles, maybe didn't hit a number here and there. That's kind of coming home to roost right now when they're looking at, the portal, and they've brought in one guy, and they're, almost certainly going to be looking for a guy to bring in May, if nothing else to add depth, but I think they're going to be looking for a starter in May. But so if you can roll 6 out in this class, that prevents you in 2 or 3 years from maybe having to do this again. So important pickup here. Buckeyes spring practice is off and running. So there's gonna be a lot of recruiting coverage on BuckeyeHuddle.com. We're going to have visitor updates. They've offered a couple of Ohioans at practice. I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much because these were kind of no-brainers, but we did talk about both Maxwell Riley, 2026 offensive lineman out of Avon Lake, and 2025 Lakota West tight end Luca Gilbert. Not only did we predict Gilbert would absolutely get an offer about 2 weeks ago, but we also said Riley is kind of going to be a national guy as well. So saw him coming. There's going to be some we don't see coming. So, get in on the action over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'll be there to break it all down. Get some prospect interviews coming out of these visits, inside information, where things are leaning, where things are moving. There's going to be a lot of shuffling around this spring. We're going to find out who's serious about Ohio State and who Ohio State's serious about here in the next couple of weeks. So going to be a fun time to get on the site and kind of discuss recruiting. And we're taping this in the middle of my weekly chat. So we got that going on each week. You can ask us kind of anything that's on your mind. Our guys jump into my thread as well. So it's not just me you're talking to. And so we got all that stuff on BuckeyeHuddle.com. So hope to see you over there. And thank you guys for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time.